that means we are so close to the end of the year. And I get so excited. Oh, and I don't know about you guys, but here today, okay, so I know some of you, like probably Renee, you probably have a lot warmer weather than we have up here, but today is going to get up to 72. And so it's warm out. I did all sorts of laundry this morning. I've got everything hanging on the lines, and it is just awesome. But we're supposed to have like really strong storms this afternoon. So I'm kind of on the outlook. They said in our area we could get tornado warnings. So, yeah. Oh, in the 90s. I know. Isn't it nice? The birds are actually singing, and you walk outside and it's like, oh, I know. We've got a few buds on the trees and I've got some tulips coming up and some crocuses. It was 95. Ah! I can't imagine that. Oh, yeah, it won't be long, and, we'll get those, probably another couple months. Yeah, in March, it's crazy, isn't it? But it will be April soon, and that's exciting. I know, when you think about that, my kids, my 2 of my daughters live in Pensacola, Florida, and it gets so hot in there in the summer, and it's humid. And they spend all their time indoors. They don't go to the beach because, they'll get fried to a crisp, as soon as they go. So that is just yeah, I like to live where it gets cold, and it doesn't get too hot in the summer. All right, let's see. Any prayer requests this morning or this afternoon? I can't believe it's afternoon already. I've been doing all sorts of stuff today, and I feel like my day is just kind of um going away with me here. Oh, you have to go to your neighbor's pool. Isn't that nice? So, my daughters, where they live, they have a pool in their apartment complexes, and it's really nice because they have little cabanas there where it's shaded, and they have, like a little house, like a gym, and you can get cold water, and then they always supply them with coffee, and then there's, like, machines with other drinks in them. So that's kinda nice. So you can kinda cool down a little bit. It's air conditioned, so you can go in there and still go use the pool. You're teaching a Bible class on Sunday. Good job, Lena. Awesome. And you'll have to really, uh, just make sure that you're calm and prepared. So that's an exciting thing to do, and what a privilege to be able to do that. Okay, let's start with a word of prayer this morning. Or this afternoon. Okay. Dear Lord, I thank you so much for today and for all that you do for us. I ask that you would just be with each one of us as we go about our day. I know that we've had a lot of work in the past few weeks, and we're getting close to the end. And I know some of our students are getting ready to graduate, and they might feel a little overwhelmed right now. I just pray that you would just help them to just do one thing at a time and to just rely on you for their strength. And Lord, I ask that you would just be with Lena as she'll be teaching a Bible class coming up. And I pray that you would just help her to be at peace and to be calm and not be nervous, but to just have your strength to teach. And Lord, I ask that you would just be with each of us today as we go about our day, that we would be a blessing to somebody else. We pray these things in your name. Amen. Okay, let's go to our game. And let's see, our Kahoot pin number was up at the top. Let me put it back down here in case nobody's gotten it yet. Um, and that's 623-3317. All right, let's go on over there. And we got a new screen here, and it's spring. I was so excited to see that they had something except for that, besides that purple. It was driving me crazy. I know it, isn't it? It just kind of reminds me of a really old painting or a cartoon, it just kind of looks like it would be interesting to. I just love spring. I got some flowers coming up, so that makes me happy. Hit the wrong button. Okay. There we go. Okay. I know there's so many buttons to hit. Okay. So we're talking about the digestive system. A lot to learn here. And we're going to go over quite a bit today. So hopefully you've got your notes going and ready to go. We're down to the last few weeks. Oh, let me remind you, no classes next week. Okay, I'll say it again at the end of class. No classes next week. So if you're missing any assignments, this is a great time to get caught up because this will be the last week we have off. So remember, I only eliminate one low grade. So you want to make sure that you have everything turned in. If it's a test or a quiz, message me and I'll open it for you so you can take that. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the digestive system. And we have several organs that work together in our digestive system that break down food so we can absorb all the nutrients and the vitamins and different things that are in the food that we eat. And then it goes through to the small and large intestine where the leftovers or the waste products are eliminated. All right, so we start with the mouth, and our mouth and our teeth are the first part of the digestive system. So they go from there down to the esophagus, into the stomach, the small intestine, then into the large intestine, the rectum, and then to the anus. And then there you have lots of other organs that work together that are going to be producing different hormones or digestive juices. So, like the liver, your gallbladder, and your pancreas. So, those are all part of the digestive system because they play a role in how, like, the small intestine and the large intestine and the stomach actually work. So, they are necessary for the digestive system. So, you start off with eating. Okay. And the first part of eating is chewing. We call that mastication. And mastication is a physical change. You're changing the food, you're breaking it down. Okay. So once you break it down, it starts to dissolve. Okay. And so that is a physical change. I just, ate my lunch. You can't swallow it whole. You chew it up. It makes it smaller and easier to swallow. So you dissolve that food and it goes into the stomach and it starts dissolving. So those are physical changes. So the breaking food, what it does is it actually breaks down into the different molecules that our body can actually use. And so then it goes to different parts of our body. So when we're taking a look at our mouth, let's take a look right here. Look right here where it's kind of boxed up. This is where our jaw is, right here, like the end of our jaw. Okay, right by our ear. Okay, some of you might have where you're like your jaw might get stuck every once in a while and you have to kind of wiggle it around. That most of the time it's this muscle right here that gets really tight. Some of you might, like if you chew gum or different things, sometimes you notice that your jaw might get tight because those muscles get tight. Or like if you're talking too high. Oh, that's oh, yuck. I'm so sorry. Just sound of it just sounds horrible. But yeah, you can do that. And what happens, the muscles get loose too. And so the muscles can get really tight in your cheeks. Do you ever smile so much that your cheeks hurt and the muscles hurt? Or you talk too much and your muscles hurt? And so, it kind of tightens up the jaw then. And so then it makes it hard to eat. Or if you're eating a certain foods. Um, there was one cereal we used to get. I'm trying to think of it. My husband likes, oh, um, it's just a little gravelly cereal, Oat Bran or not Oat Bran, I don't know. It's just it's it's not bad. Grape nuts, yes, that's it. And you chew a couple bites of that and your jaw starts hurting because you're chewing so hard to, maybe you've had certain foods like that where, like you chew really hard and those muscles get tight. And so you can see right here, everything kind of fits right in here and it's not really a good socket. So yeah, if your jaw gets dislocated, it's not a strong, yes, an old person food. My husband loves them. I cannot eat them because my jaw just starts hurting after a while. And so a grape nut ice cream, I have not heard of that, huh? All right, so right here you've got just a little muscle, and this bone as it clicks in there, it's not a complete ball and socket. So it can dislocate and it can get very sore. And some people who have TMG, which is with their I can't think of the exact name of it, but it's trans something, and it's basically your jawbone gets locked into a position sometimes, and sometimes it can get locked open where you can't close your mouth, and they can go in and do different things to help with that. So kind of interesting when you take a look at this. All right, so let's take a look at what's going on. So in your mouth, first of all, we start chewing our food. You have salivary glands all through your mouth, your cheek. Do you ever think of something really sour? And your cheek right here, it just starts salivating right away. So you have salivary glands all through your mouth. They help actually chemically break down food because there's enzymes in there. Saliva is mostly water, but there's a few enzymes in there, and they start breaking down the food. And it also makes it easier for you to chew and swallow. Do you ever have like really dry mouth and try to chew and swallow, and it's too dry and you can't swallow? So that saliva is really helpful in helping you to be able to swallow. And then you have your esophagus. Okay, so right through here, okay, going down, you have your esophagus, and there's a you have muscles in your esophagus that contract and they push the food down, and the food, once you've chewed it up, is called a bolus. Okay, so that mass of food is called a bolus, and it starts just kind of a wave action, and that's called peristalsis, where the waves, the muscles just kind of push the food all the way down, and they get into the stomach. Once it's in the stomach churns the food along with digestive juices. Most of that is hydrochloric acid. Okay, which is a strong acid. And once it's broken down, that fluid that's in there, the broken down food and the acid, is called chyme. And it breaks the food bolus into that just massive mess in there. Okay. All right. So then you have your small intestine where the digestion and the absorption takes place. So the small intestine mixes the chyme with other digestive juices from the pancreas and the liver. And the walls of the small intestine have these little villi, like little fingers, that absorb all of the digestive nutrients. So they're going to absorb the carbohydrates, the proteins, the fats, and those are going to go into the bloodstream. And then you have your large intestine, and water absorption is done there. So excess water is absorbed out of that, and then the waste, it forms a solid, and then the solid is moved on down and it's eliminated from the body. Okay, so let's take a look at how all those parts a little bit more in depth here. So in digestion, you have proteins. Proteins are made out of amino acids. So for your body to make proteins, it has to have amino acids. You get those amino acids from eating proteins. So it's kind of a little circle there. Then you have carbohydrates. Carbohydrates we usually think of as monosaccharides, which are simple sugars. Mono meaning one, saccharides mean sugars. Then you have your fats, which turn into fatty acids. Then you have your vitamins and minerals that are absorbed, and they are chemically changed so they can be used in the body. And most of all of this happens in the small intestine. So our stomach does not absorb all of these nutrients. Our stomach just breaks down the food for our small intestine to absorb all the nutrients. Okay, so when you eat, it takes about 24 to 72 hours for that food to go through the entire digestive system. So some of you are still digesting your lunch from yesterday. Okay. Some people, they have a faster digestive system. Some people, they have a slower digestive system, part of your metabolism. Okay. All right. So food moves through the digestive system usually in 24 to 72 hours. It starts moving in waves, okay, through the peristalsis, which is those contractions that are in our esophagus, and they pass through all the way through. the digestive system. So it goes through the esophagus to the stomach, the small intestine, large intestine, and to the rectum. Now, peristalsis is those contractions that push food along, not only through our esophagus, but also through our large and small intestine. Okay, and this is where your nerves and your muscles contract. Okay, so you guys know I had my spinal stimulator. Okay, so I have it on high today, on a higher number, because my lower back is really sore. Okay. And I don't know, I must have slept wrong or something, but it's just been sore to walk here. But okay, so because it's at a higher level, okay, typically at a lower level, I feel like my feet and then like mid leg all the way down, from my mid upper leg all the way down. And I feel, like a little tingling sensation. And it's just very relaxing, and there's no pain. It shut off the other day because it ran out of battery power, and my feet, just the nerve pain was just unbearable. So I was like, "Oh, that thing really does work a lot." So, I had to charge myself up again. All right, so back was hurting, so I turned it up. And right now, okay, from like my mid back all the way around my stomach, just sitting here. Usually I have to lean back to feel everything. But because I turned it up, I can feel it really strong. And so I can feel the muscles and or the nerves around the organ tissue, and I can feel them kind of expanding. So like I can feel like I just ate and I could feel it in my stomach. I could feel like my stomach just kind of moving a little bit. And then I could feel like, like your large and small intestine, you can feel all the nerves there, and you can feel how everything moves. And it's just the weirdest sensation. So it's really kind of interesting talking about all this, because it just kind of makes you're like, I can feel it. And most of the time we don't feel that. We don't feel everything that's going on. Sometimes, your stomach will grumble a little bit, or you'll feel too full after eating a big meal, and you'll feel it a little bit. But most of the time we don't feel anything that's going on, right? So this kind of, talking about this just brings on the reality. It's like I can feel something that I have never experienced before in my life. So most of you will never experience. So it's pretty cool. But you can feel like that peristalsis, where the small and large intestine just kind of, there's just a wave action, and it pushes everything through. So I can kind of feel that. I can kind of feel like these little things going on, so it's just a weird sensation. So your GI is your gastrointestinal tract. And this is how the food moves, and the speed of that is managed by your nerves, like I'm talking about, and your hormones. So if you have a fast or slow metabolism, your metabolism will kind of let you know how quickly food moves through your system. So, it's just kind of neat that we're talking about this. So, typically 24 to 72 hours. And most of that time is spent in the large intestine, because water is pulled out, and that's where the waste products are. And it takes a while for it to move. The large intestine goes up, across, and down. Okay, and so like if you're ever having trouble with your, like, feeling like you're heavy, you can rub your stomach, and they tell you to rub your stomach, your abdomen, in, let's see, the clockwise position. So it goes along with how your intestines go, and it just kind of moves that, kind of giving it the same motion as it's supposed to go. So that's kind of interesting, that they would tell you to do something like that. So first we start off with the mouth, okay, and we looked at the muscles right over here, where your jaw is, and this is where we take our food, we start chewing it, and saliva is produced. And the saliva allows for the beginning of a chemical digestion. Now, the pharynx is the throat, which connects right here from the mouth to the esophagus, which carries the food down down to the stomach is a muscular sac. So if you've ever dissected a stomach, the muscle tissue around that is really strong. It's amazing. It's just so thick, and it's just, and you can see this in any, like if you do any type of dissection, not a human, but other animal, and you can see that the sac is just really thick, and it's amazing. And it's smooth on the outside, which is really kind of cool. But on the inside, it has all these little like fingers where it does all the action, like there's a lot of movement in there. And then your small intestine is where the nutrients are all absorbed, and the large intestine is where water is absorbed. So the rectum is a kind of a sac where the large intestine dumps the waste in until it's ready to be eliminated from your body. And so we see that the gastrointestinal tract is also called the alimentary canal, and it takes about 30 feet to get all the way around. That's a long distance where food has to travel. So this tube runs from the mouth all the way to the anus, and it's the pathway where digested food takes its journey. And this is where everything happens. So we see that this canal starts with the oral cavity. All right, the mouth, and it goes through the gastrointestinal tract. So it goes through all the different organs there, the pharynx, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, and then to the large intestine. So this is a long passage. Now, the majority of the different nutrients that are absorbed are going to be taking place in the small intestine. This is what the skin would look like inside the small intestine. It's like tiny little fingers. Now, with this design, there's a lot of absorption that can take place because nutrients can be absorbed all the way around each finger instead of having smooth skin where it can only be absorbed in this one layer here. But because it goes up and down, there's a lot of surface area where all these nutrients can be absorbed. So this is a really amazing design. Now, there are a couple parts to the small intestine. There's the jejunum. I know I'm saying that wrong, and the ileum. All right. And the inner wall of the small intestine is lined with these villi, which are these like small fingers. And then there's microvilli, which are even smaller, and all the molecules are going to be absorbed into these. So you can have glucose and amino acids that these molecules will absorb, and they're going to go into the bloodstream directly through the capillaries in the villi. Okay, so the capillaries are going to go to all the different parts of our body. So the capillaries are going to absorb those right into the bloodstream. Your fatty acids and your glycerols are going to enter into the lymphatic vessels. Okay, we talked about the lymphatic system last week, and they're going to go through where we have our lacteals. Okay, so right here, these are our lacteals. We're going to look at those a little bit better later on. And they're going to go through the lacteals before they enter into the bloodstream. And then the nutrients are going to be taken through both the passive process, which is diffusion, and the active process, transport, which is using energy to move nutrients across the cell membranes. Okay. And so both of those processes are going to allow nutrients to get into the bloodstream and to get to where they should be. Okay. So your mouth initiates the whole process. Okay, for any food to get digested, it has to go through the mouth first. And so this is where our digestion begins. Food is masticated, or we have the mechanical digestion where you start grinding your food into smaller pieces so it can be dissolved. And saliva is going to start breaking down some of those foods, especially carbohydrates. And there's a couple parts in our mouth. You have the hard palate and the soft palate. Your hard palate, stick your tongue up like right behind your top front teeth, and you can feel a bone. Go, take your tongue and go all the way back as far as you can until it gets soft. Probably like it feels like you're going like halfway back. Okay. That's your hard palate where it's still hard. Okay. And then when you get towards the back of your mouth, you can feel where it's a soft palate, okay, where it's a little softer, okay, and you can stick your tongue and move it, okay. So the hard palate, you can kind of feel like some little bones there, okay, and and then you get to the soft palate, and it's really soft there, okay. So the palate is the roof of your mouth. The front of it is going to have kind of a more of a rigid surface. If you feel it, you can feel like there's a ridge in the center. Okay, that's going to help with chewing your food, and it also helps because it's a barrier from like your nasal cavity to your mouth. Okay, and so some people, they're born with palate problems where they have a hole in their hard palate or their soft palate, and it's connects right with the nose. So you've probably seen commercials where they ask for money for um people in foreign countries that need surgery for different things like this. And most of the time, that happens due to poor nutrition in their food or like a lack of like prenatal vitamins. And so that can cause that. So the soft palate is towards the back of your throat, and it has a lot of muscles, so it kind of helps with the swallowing process because it kind of pushes down. So like when you swallow, if you kind of feel your mouth here and take a good swallow, you can feel like if you can feel that in your mouth, you can feel how that soft palate kind of moves up and down and helps you swallow. So it's going to help foods when you're swallowing, so it doesn't enter into the nasal cavity, so it doesn't go up into everything is connected right here, your ear, nose, and throat. So you've probably, and some of you probably have done this where you've probably like coughed or laughed really hard while you've got food in your mouth, and all of a sudden food goes, from going down your throat, it goes up and it might come out your nose. Okay. And that, unfortunately, that can happen. Just don't do that with soda pop. You don't want to do that with anything hard. You don't want that to happen at all because it's not supposed to happen. But because everything is connected, it can happen that way. I just was laughing really hard when I had soda pop in my mouth and I was swallowing, and soda pop comes out your nose, and it was very bubbly and it hurts. So you don't want to do that. But that soft palate helps you to make sure the food goes down the right way. So the hard palate, if you take a look here, um, let's take a look right here. So here's our nasal passages, and here is our hard palate right here, which is pretty solid. Okay. Our soft palate is a little further back, and this is real muscular. Okay. But notice how everything is connected right here. Okay. This is why when you have a cold, your sinuses are dripping, they'll drip into the back of your throat. If you look with a flashlight, you can actually see it running down the back of your throat because it's all connected. So it kind of keeps everything from, like when you swallow, the soft palate helps things go down, okay, instead of up. So the hard palate is about 2/3 of the roof of your mouth, and your soft palate is in the back third. And your hard palate is fixed, and your soft palate is able to move. It separates the nasopharynx, which is right here. Okay, this is kind of where the nose and the pharynx kind of move together. Okay, from the oropharynx, where the oropharynx is down here. Okay, so it separates those two. Okay, now how many of you have ever had braces? Do you ever have braces? Any of you? Okay, you have, Alessa. Okay. Anybody else? You have, Lena? Okay, so 2 of my kids had braces, and they had a small upper jaw. So they had an extender that was in their mouth to extend their soft palate so it moved out. And, so every day there was like this metal wire that went across, like from the middle of their teeth, in the back, went across, and your soft palate or your hard palate is made with cartilage. So you would turn this little metal wheel in there that would push out, and you would turn it one time every day. And so it expanded their mouth. Okay. And when it gets to the final point where, like you push and push and push so far, eventually you hear a snap. And what happens is the soft palate snaps, or the hard palate snaps, and it kind of allows it to stretch out so your jaw can stretch out. Okay. And so we had to do that with two of my children because their top jaw was smaller than their bottom jaw. And so this made their jaws even. And so it's soft. The hard palate is not made with like bone, but cartilage. And so it eventually fuses together, and the skin is still there, covering it, so it's not, there's no hole going into the nasal passage, but it just expands it a little bit. Okay. And so that's kind of it's really neat what technology can do today. So that would be right over here, like right across here. And this is that area right here where the rafe is. That is what kind of snaps and pulls apart, and then it eventually heals. So when you swallow, I'm finding myself swallowing a lot in class now. um when you swallow, it elevates the seal right over here. Okay, as you swallow, it elevates this seal right here, which goes across. So your food goes down instead of up. Okay. When you speak, okay, when you use those nasally sounds like M, N, those it what it does is it lifts and closes air off to for you to make those sounds. And when you're breathing, it stays lowered to allow air to come in and allow for free movement of your air in and out of your lungs. Okay. But it acts like a gatekeeper, making sure things go in the right, like when you say you swallowed something and it went down the wrong pipe, you don't want it to go to your lungs. Okay. And then you end up with that coughing reflex, and you're trying to cough whatever you swallowed into your lungs out. It's because it's supposed to work the right way all the time. But every once in a while, it missteps, right? And it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. Okay, so you have different teeth. Your teeth are for mastication, chewing, okay, and breaking the food apart. So you have your incisors. Your incisors are right here, okay, and these are for cutting your food. Your first front two teeth, and then you have your canines. Now, typically, if you look at your canines right here, they're a little bit more pointed, okay? And they tear the food apart, okay? You think about your dog, your cat, and you see them, tearing something apart. Okay, and then you have your premolars right down here. These are going to, and your molars, they're going to crush and grind your food. Some of you may have had your wisdom teeth out, or maybe you are going to, or maybe you still have them because they're not bothering you. That is awesome. There's a lot of controversy on whether you should take those wisdom teeth out. If they're not bothering you, you should just leave them in there. It means your mouth is large enough for them. Some people, your mouth is too small for them. So, you have them removed. But those crush and grind your food. They're flat. And when you chew, it just kind of breaks the food apart. So we see that that's, everything on how that works in your mouth is really important. Now, your saliva is mostly water, okay? And there's some enzymes in there, and it is produced by your salivary gland. So we have some different salivary glands. I think I have a better picture, probably on the next slide here, but they're very important for your health. Okay. It's, when if you don't have enough saliva in your mouth, it's not going to, your mouth gets dry and bacteria can start growing. And you can have some problems with, like your teeth, and, your throat and different things like that. So it moistens your mouth, and it's very important for that, and it helps with digestion because it moistens the food, and it has an enzyme in it. It's like we said, it's mostly water, but there are some enzymes in there. One of the enzymes is amylase, and that initiates digestion, and it helps protect your teeth, the enamel on your teeth. Okay. And you guys all know, you brush your teeth to get off any excess food, and you should floss. I know I'm horrible at flossing. Try to do it every day, but I don't always do it every day. And then the dentist always yells at me because She says, "Were you flossing every day?" And I have to be honest, no. But we should floss, make sure there's no food left in between our teeth. But the amylase covers our teeth and kind of protects our enamel, but bacteria can break that down and it can cause a cavity. So, on average, you produce anywhere from 2 to 4 pints of saliva every day. Now, how much is in a pint? How many cups are in a pint? Does anyone know? I'm going to give you a little math question here today. Two. Okay. So you got 2 cups in a pint, and you got anywhere from 2 pints to 4 pints. So that could be anywhere from 4 to 8 cups of saliva every day. That's kind of, when you think about it, that's just really gross. When you think about how much saliva our body produces. So, when you're really dry in your mouth, typically it's because we are dehydrated. And so we need more water or fluids in our body. So because it's mostly made out of water, you're gonna get it by making sure that you drink plenty of water. And there's also different electrolytes and antibacterial compounds. There's some mucus and enzymes that are in our saliva. So a lot of different things that are there. Okay, we're gonna go take a break. Let's see. Re- Recording again. Okay. All right. So saliva has different antibodies in them. Okay. So one is IgA and IgG, which serve as kind of a defense, the first line of defense against different pathogens that are in your mouth and in your gut. Okay. SIGA, or the IgA, is located in the it's produced in the salivary glands, and the IgG enters through the blood through the gingival crevices. Okay, so when we talk about gingival crevices, those are going to be like if you get like in the like crevices of your of the like the teeth and everything. So you're and so we end up with these antibodies, and they help neutralize a lot of viruses and bacteria right away in our mouth. Okay. If you have a good um immune system, they're going to break those down as soon as possible. Okay, so a lot of that is broken down right there. Okay, like your skin is a good defense against a lot of pathogens, making sure that you wash before you eat so you don't have a lot of germs going into your mouth at once. There's too many germs going in all at once, it's not going to have a very good defense system. So then those bacteria can get in. But our saliva really kind of takes in a lot, because you think about, there are a lot of viruses and bacteria that are floating in the air. As you're breathing, they're going to come into our mouth or our nose, and the mucus in your nose is going to trap a lot of those, or in your mouth the saliva is going to trap those, and you're going to be able to get a lot of that just removed before it get or destroyed before it even gets into your body. So here we see some different things that are a good help to us in our saliva. And then we get into our pharynx. Okay, so our pharynx is this entire area right here. Okay, so part of our nose and our mouth, and part of the beginning of our esophagus. So right here. Okay, so the back side of our mouth. Okay, and a little bit as we start swallowing down. Okay, so there's three regions of that. The nasopharynx is this part right here, which is like part of the nose. Naso, thinking nose. So it's right in the back of our nose, where like where everything kind of goes all the way to the back of our sinuses, and that's where everything starts going down our throat right there. And then we have the oropharynx, which is in the back of the mouth. Okay, and then we have this is the part where food and air like come in. Okay, and then we have this purple area, which is the hypopharynx, and that sometimes it's called the laryngopharynx, and this is where the your mouth as things come in, you have food and you have air coming in. Okay, so it's the food is directed to the esophagus, and the air is located or directed towards the trachea. So you can see right here where everything is directed. Okay, right down here, like kind of a little bit below our mouth. So like right in this area. Okay, where you feel your trachea. You can feel like kind of little hard tube going down. You can feel the ridges right there. Okay, so right through here, you see we've got our esophagus, that's where food is going down, and our trachea, that's where the air is going down. Okay, so those tubes are connected. They're connected right here. Okay, so this is where sometimes when you cough or sneeze, you swallow something and you say it goes down the wrong pipe, it means that right here that flap was not where it was supposed to, and something gets into your lungs, and then you end up coughing it up. Okay, hopefully. And you can, it might hurt for a while because you do a lot of hacking and coughing to get, like if you get a drink down there, some water or some, maybe even some food, and you try to get it out. So your body has that cough reflex to get whatever goes down the wrong pipe to where it should be. So these are where our saliva glands are, or our salivary glands are. Okay, so they're going to start digesting the starches in our food, and the amylase is going to break down starches and complex carbohydrates into sugars, and this is going to allow them to be absorbed a little bit easier. Okay, so they're going to continue to be broken down as we get into our stomach and into our small intestine, but this is the starting process. So the saliva has another enzyme which is called lingual lipase, and this is going to break down fats. And saliva's four main components are your water, your enzymes, the immunoproteins, and the minerals. And these all work together for our overall health and to help with our digestion. Okay, so when we talk about breaking down fats, okay, those of you who help with dishes, if you have fats in a pan like oil and grease, you know that it's not going to just come apart with just water, right? You have to use something to break it down, and this is where your dish soap comes in. Your dish soap has different things in it that break down fats, and so sometimes you have to use a little more soap on those things to break down the fats and get all the grease out of the pans. Or let's say you're making like a meatloaf or hamburgers, and you have like raw hamburger in your hands. You notice that your hands get a lot of that fat on them. Okay, more so than if you're working with chicken. Okay, and that fat, it sticks to your hands, and you really have to use a lot of soap and get it into like all the crevices to break down that fat to get it out of there. Our body has to break down fat, and so we have to have special chemicals or enzymes that actually break down that fat, and one of them is lipase. So that's where, oh, let's go back over there. So if we take a look at where our salivary glands are, they are right through here, okay, like your back of your cheek. Okay, this is where, you think of something sour, and they just kind of clench up and they start salivating. And then you have them like kind of under here, under your jaw, okay, your submandibular. And then we have them right over here, which is kind of like along the side of our jawline, okay. And this is why, you produce saliva like around your teeth. So we see that we have several different types of salivary glands there. So here we see them right again. Okay, so we can see where all of them are. Okay, all these little dark patches. Okay, so your salivary glands are exocrine glands, and they produce the saliva. And this is going to, like we talked about, it's going to have different enzymes in there that are going to break down the foods. And they also protect your mouth and your teeth. And sometimes they even protect our whole body from different pathogens that might get in. So there are two main types of salivary glands. You have your major and your minor salivary glands. And the major ones are your parotoid, okay, which are right along the side of your cheeks, right here, these large ones, okay, right here. And then your submandibular, right down here, and your sublingual glands right here. Okay, so those are all those. And then there's little minor salivary glands all throughout your mouth. Okay, so those aren't big enough for us to, they're just kind of all throughout our mouth, and they're all through the oral cavity and the aerodigestive tract. So they're as it's going down, it helps salivate. Okay, did you ever try to swallow something really dry and you can't get it down, and you just keep swallowing and trying to the saliva to get it to go down? Like if you swallow a pill and it gets stuck, and then you're drinking water so it has more liquid going down to just kind of bring it down. Or maybe you get a, not to say mom's a bad cook, but maybe mom made something that was really dry and you're trying to swallow it, you know and it gets kind of stuck, and so you add more saliva and more water to get it down, because you don't have enough saliva. So there's saliva that's all the way down through here too, that helps get those foods out, and anything that's stuck in our throats. So, your salivary glands are considered small organs. All right. And they are in your face and your mouth and your neck area. Okay. And they are going to produce the saliva, and they are going to help, like we said, maintain hygiene. They are going to help break down food that gets stuck in your mouth. But this is where brushing comes along. You have to brush those teeth so you don't get cavities. Okay. All right, so the three major pairs are your parotoid, which are from the ear down to like the base of our jaw, your submandibular, which are near your jaw right here, and your sublingual, which are kind of like under your tongue along the side of the teeth there. All right, and then all the little minor glands that are throughout your mouth. Okay, you actually even have saliva glands that are like on the roof of your mouth. And then, like if you just let the saliva build up, and you probably notice this when you get nervous and you try to talk, you find where those little salivary glands are. If you get a dry mouth, you can actually get a lot of pain and swelling that's also associated with that if your salivary glands are not working properly. So they can cause a lot of problems. Okay, then you have your parotoid glands right here, which are the ones by your cheek. Okay, right over here. Let me get my right through here. Okay, and these are the largest of your salivary glands, and they are producing the saliva to lubricate your mouth. All right, those are your major ones right there. And a lot of problems that could happen would be to get infections, which would be called periotitis, and then different stones you can have in your throat, which are tonsil stones, tumors. Like we said, pain or swelling if things get dry, and sometimes even facial numbness. And sometimes what they can do is give antibiotics to help with that, and increase your hydration. But sometimes there's surgical methods that they use too. So that's, when we think about how important our salivary glands are, they are really important. So we secrete about a liter of saliva every day, and it's controlled by the autonomic nervous system, and it's controlled through your reflexes and the neural pathways. It helps us also with, like we talked about, all the different things that it's really good for. But like prevent keeping you healthy, and all those different things, and breaking down foods. But it also helps you to taste your foods better. Okay, and it also helps in your smelling. Okay, because you're like we said, your ear, nose, and throat are all connected. Okay, so it also helps with the taste and smell. When you eat, your nose plays a major part in helping you to taste your food. So, like when you get a cold and can't smell, food tastes differently because you can't smell with, along with your eating your food. So it changes the taste of the food. So all of that is really connected in helping us to be able to taste stuff. Then we have our esophagus. Okay, food goes down, and it's a hollow muscular tube that's right behind your trachea or your windpipe. Your trachea is right up front. Okay, and it's located a little further back towards the spine. Okay, and it's lined with mucous membranes, and it has sphincter muscles, which keep closed, okay, and they will open up when needed. Okay, so those sphincter muscles close to make sure things stay where they're supposed to so they don't come back up, they stay down, okay, and they open up when it's time for food to go down, okay, and so it regulates the flow of food. If people who eat too fast, sometimes that muscle might not work as easily, or it tries to stop them from swallowing. So kind of just slow you down there. And its function is to get the food to the stomach. And so there's muscular contractions that happen, which is the peristalsis, and that squeezes the food down into the esophagus. And the esophagus is the upper part of the gastrointestinal tract, or the GI tract. And this plays a huge part in the digestive process because food has to go into the stomach. Your stomach is going to let you know when you're hungry. Sometimes it makes a lot of noises, and sometimes it makes noises when, it's mixing with the chyme to break down the food. Sometimes, your stomach might be a noisy stomach and it makes noises. Or if you've had a lot to drink or eat right away and you move, you can hear it sloshing back and forth. So you can see that your stomach starts with that digestive process. And so you have the chyme from the esophagus to your esophagus is about 10 to 13 inches long. And then you've got an upper esophageal sphincter and a lower esophageal sphincter. And these help prevent the food from going up and down the windpipe, allowing it just, or the, not the windpipe, the esophagus. There we go. And it also helps, the upper one helps food from going into the trachea, or the windpipe. Okay, makes sure that it goes into the esophagus. So this also, once it goes down, there's a sphincter that opens up into the stomach and then closes again and keeps everything in the stomach. Okay. So you have three sections. You've got the cervical, the thoracic, and the abdominal, a part of your esophagus. So the esophagus's main function is to transport food into the stomach. Okay. So this is what that sphincter will look like. Here's the muscle, okay, and it just has a tiny hole. When everything is ready to go in, the hole opens and then it closes back up again. Okay, so here you're going to have a sphincter right here, right in before it gets into the stomach. Okay, and so here you can see this is where in the esophagus, this is where those muscles are going to contract and just kind of push the food down. Um, this muscular tube is going to allow food to go all the way down into the stomach, and gravity is going to help everything to go down instead of come back up. We don't want things to come back up, right? um, Once it's inside your stomach, the stomach acid is going to start churning that food. Okay, and that's what we want to happen. So there's three stages of swallowing our food. Okay, swallowing is also called deglution. Okay, and this is where food moves down through the mouth and it goes into the stomach. So you can see here we have the three stages of the food. You were first the bolus of the food goes to the back of our throat, and then it gets pushed down into the back of our esophagus, and then it goes down where it's supposed to go. Okay, so you can see with breathing, okay, this flap right here opens and everything goes into the trachea, or the windpipe. Okay, so we see that they know exactly where they're supposed to go. So the the muscle motor action there is very critical, and it allows for us to survive by not having food go into the wrong pipe, going into our lungs. And so this is really important for us, that ability to swallow. I've been around some people who've had terrible diseases where they could not swallow. So then they have to eat through a feeding tube to make sure that the food goes where it's supposed to go. So, it's our God has made our bodies just amazing, and they work perfectly almost all of the time. we might have a few incidences where they might not work right, with you, like you cough or sneeze or laugh or something, and you have a little mistake. Okay. But for the most part, our whole swallowing system works so wonderfully, and it is amazing. Okay. Wow. Okay, so we have the voluntary stage where the bolus is pushed to the back of the mouth by our tongue, and then the soft palate lifts the blocks to the nasopharynx, and you can't breathe while you swallow. So next time you think about that, you can't breathe while you're swallowing. The larynx lifts up, and the epiglottis closes off the trachea, and the muscles constrict, so the bolus goes down the esophagus, and then the muscles contract and relax, creating the peristalsis, which allows the food to go down. So the oral phase is the voluntary phase where food is chewed. And then we have the involuntary phase, which is the pharyngeal phase. And the bolus hits the posterior pharyngeal wall, and it triggers that reflex where the airway passage is closed, and the epiglottis covers that airway and allows your breathing to stop and allows you to swallow the food. And then the esophageal phase, which is involuntary, that's when the peristalsis takes over, and the wave-like motion takes the bolus all the way down to the stomach. Okay, so you have a cough reflex. This allows you to get foreign bodies out of your respiratory tract. So if you were to swallow the wrong way, it allows you to clear the air and clear that obstruction. So the esophageal sphincter has two bands of muscles at the top and bottom of the esophagus, and food enters and air enters, and the sphincter allows everything to go down the right tube. Okay, so pressure on the sphincter is going to send a message to the pons medulla oblongata, and the cranial nerves are also stimulated during this time. Stroke patients sometimes have difficulty swallowing, and so a lot of times they will have to have a feeding tube placed in to make sure that everything goes where it's supposed to go. Now, the pharynx is typically known as the throat, and that's a key part to our respiratory and digestive system. So it's the muscular tube that goes down, and it connects the pharynx connects the nasal and oral cavities, and it will go either to the esophagus, which is part of the digestive system, or the larynx, which is part of our voice box and our respiratory system. Now, we've talked about the peristalsis. This is the automatic wave motion that allows everything to go to where it should be in our throat. It also is in our small and our large intestines. Now, the stomach is also going to play a crucial role because it's going to physically and chemically break down food. It mixes with the digestive juices that have acids and enzymes, and it churns them, and it breaks them down into a thicker liquid called chyme. And the chyme is released into the small intestines where it's absorbed further. Now, the stomach has four main regions. And there are the cardia, the fundus, the body, and the pylorus. The cardia is where the esophagus connects to the stomach. The fundus is the upper dome-shaped part right here. Okay, so right here you can see that dome shape right there. And we have the body, which is kind of like the main part of the stomach. And then we have the pylorus, which is this bottom part of the stomach, which is going to connect with the small intestine. So the cardia is the smallest region. This is where it receives food from the esophagus. The fundus is the upper dome, and this basically stores the food. The body is where the stomach is situated between the fundus and the pylorus, where the food is turned with gastric juices. And the pylorus is the last part that connects to the duodenum, which is the first part of the small intestine. And there's a sphincter that regulates how much food is entered into the small intestine, okay, and or how much chyme is kind of layered into there. Okay, we're going to skip that because we're kind of running low on time here. Now, the gastric pits, there are gastric pits in the stomach that are going to contain gastric juices. This is where the gastric juices are produced. And these pits are lined with mucus cells, and they secrete a mucus that lines the stomach area. And inside these glands are specialized cells called parietal cells, chief cells, and mucous neck cells that help with the digestion process. Now your stomach has a pH, the pH scale tells you how acidic or basic and something is. Um, our stomach acid is between 1 and 3, so it's a strong acid, and so the mucus helps protect the lining of the stomach from that acid. The gastric juice is made out of hydrochloric acid, and it kills a majority of the bacteria that's in our food. Okay, so so that's really important for us. Okay, so the stomach is the primary enzyme that is going to start with the digestion process as pepsin. Now, this pepsinogen is an inactive form of pepsin, and this is released by the chief cells and it's activated by the hydrochloric acid in the stomach. This allows the pepsin to start breaking down proteins into peptides and amino acids, and that's what proteins are made out of. So our body, the cells produce proteins out of the amino acids and peptides. So when we eat proteins, it breaks it down into those, and then our cells put them back together to make new proteins. It's kind of cool what our body does. So, the intrinsic factor is not an enzyme, but it's a glycoprotein that's produced by the stomach lining. And it allows us to absorb B12 into the small intestine. And B12 is really important for like a red blood cell production. All right, so this you can also get peptic ulcers. Those are basically where the mucus is not around the entire stomach. So basically, it allows the acid in the stomach to break down the lining, and so that can cause a lot of problems with anybody. So that that can happen through medication and different things like that. That can cause different ulcers in our stomach, and that's just extremely painful. So the stomach's main role is to store the food, the bolus that we ate, and mix it up and then empty it. And as it mixes with the gastric juices, it turns into chyme, and that is entered into the small intestine. So it enters through the pyloric sphincter, and then it goes into the small intestine. Okay, so the vomiting reflex, sometimes, something comes up. Okay, so basically you inhale and the larynx elevates and the soft palate of your nasal cavity closes, and the upper and lower esophageal sphincters open, and the diaphragm and your diaphragm is like underneath, like where your lungs are, and those contract, and it basically forces whatever's in your stomach to come up. So this is why, like after you vomited, your throat hurts and your mouth tastes horrible because of all that hydrochloric acid. So and it'll cause your throat to burn. Okay, so the endocrine response in our stomach, hormones are released. There's gastrin that produces G cells, and that's produced by the G cells in the stomach. And this is going to help produce the gastric acid or the hydrochloric acid. And gastrin is increased in over by the lower esophageal sphincter to decrease GERD. GERD is like acid reflux. All right, and gastrin also reduces the pyloric tone and helps the stomach empty. And the gastrin is increased in the gastric pits to increase the rate of mixing waves. Okay, and then the stomach's absorption. Water can be absorbed through the walls of the stomach, it goes to the blood. Alcohol can be absorbed into the walls of the stomach, and it initiates stomach ulcers. And aspirin can also be absorbed in through the stomach, and that can also some medications can do the same thing. At like alcohol can produce ulcers in the stomach, depending on what they are. All right, so stomach ulcers, or your stomach sounds, sorry, are called bor borborigami or borborigami. Okay, I'll get that right. And those are those gurgling sounds that your stomach makes. Okay, and sometimes it's made by your food being digested, but sometimes there's gases in our stomach that make those noises and fluids moving. And typically they let you know, like when you're hungry. They'll make these really loud noises. They're very harmless, but sometimes they can be embarrassing. And if you have too much air that's trapped in your stomach from either eating or drinking, there you might actually, your body tries to remove that by belching. This is why, like after you drink soda pop, it has a lot of gases in our body, or in it, that get into our body, like carbon dioxide gas. Our body doesn't want that. So this is why you belch. It wants to get out. So here's our stomach. We can see that as everything goes in, okay, our everything comes in here. It goes all the way through here, and it ends up through the duodenum, which is going into the small intestine. Okay, these are some different things that can cause problems with your stomach. Okay, um, you can have different diseases, and H. pylori, which could be like your stomach bugs, different types of medications, toxic foods. Sometimes if you have foods that don't agree with you, you don't feel well after them. Alcohol, those are all things that can cause problems in the stomach. Okay. All right. So the stomach keeps food for about 2 to 4 hours. The carbohydrates and the sugars are going to leave the stomach faster. Fatty foods and protein rich foods are going to stay a little bit longer. The small intestine usually takes 1 to 4 hours to start absorbing and digesting the food, and the large intestine keeps food for a few hours to a few days as it removes the water, from the bolus and from the food, the digested food. Okay, so this is the serosa and the adventitia. These are the outer layers of the organs, and the serosa is going to be the kind of like the smooth, moist membrane that reduces friction. So that's that smoother area. Okay, and the adventitia is very fibrous and has connective tissues, and it anchors it and basically keeps it fixed in place to other surrounding tissues. Now, the gastrin is a hormone in your digestive system, and this triggers the stomach acid to be produced, the hydrochloric acid, and it keeps your digestive system running smoothly. Too much or too little can cause problems. It can cause reflux or ulcers. Reflux is when you get, like, when people say they have heartburn, where they can, they kind of feel like the food comes up just a little bit, or the stomach acid comes up a little bit. And ulcers would be very painful, regions like in your where your stomach is. So you feel like your stomach is hurting all the time. So those are different things that you would contact your doctor about if you have either one of those. So gastrin, tells your stomach when to release the gastric acid, which is the hydrochloric acid. And the muscles in your stomach are going to contract, and that's called gastric motility. Your stomach lining, it has mucosa on it, that mucus that helps keep it safe from the hydrochloric acid, and it has to constantly replenish itself. And that is with the help of choleocytoconin. Gastrin triggers your gallbladder and your pancreas to contract. So those are necessary when we get into the small intestine. So that's kind of important there. So the organs in your digestive system produce and release gastrin, as part of the digestive process. And there's a hormone that comes from the cells in the lining of your organs, and these are called G cells, which are gastrin cells. Most gastrin comes from the bottom part of your stomach, and the gastrin glands in your stomach produce those G cells or contain those G cells. And the first part of your small intestine, which is the duodenum, and the pancreas makes some gastrin also. So that's where the gastrin comes from. Now, when we talked about heartburn, heartburn is a painful, like burning sensation in your chest or your throat. And that's because the gastrin or the stomach acid, the hydrochloric acid, kind of goes up and down the throat a little bit because the sphincter isn't closed all the way. And sometimes it gets worse after you eat like a heavy meal or if you lay down because when you lay down, everything can, is flat, so it can move up. And so it can leave like a sour taste in your mouth, kind of like just really nasty bloating. You feel like your stomach is full of air and maybe you keep belching a lot. And it hurts like right through here. So right through your chest area behind your breastbone. And a lot of times people can take antacids to see if that helps. But a bigger help is if you're overweight, to lose weight and avoiding foods that will usually cause that, because some foods tend to cause that for some people. And then sleeping elevated in bed, so you're not flat down, but sleeping at an angle. And I'll tell you, my daughter has heartburn right now, and she's getting into her like 8.5 months of pregnancy. She says, "What do I do?" I said, "You have to sleep kind of sitting up, kind of sleep at an angle. Eat small meals, eat small little meals all throughout the day, and drink plenty of fluids." And she goes, "Every time I drink water, I get heartburn." And I said, "Yeah, you're just going to have to." I said, "You can take like different supplements, like Tums has calcium in that will help reduce that acid a little bit. You can do that and then kind of lay at an angle so that can help." Okay, wow. I was getting a little nervous because I'm like, we're not going to finish class today. But we did everything. So hopefully you learned a lot and you had fun as we learned about some of these things today. So next week we do not have class, and if check your grade book to see if you're missing any assignments and get those turned in. If you need a test or quiz open, just email me and I will open it as soon as I can, and I will let you know when I open it, and I'll leave it open for you for a few days. All right, so finish reading your module 13, and keep doing your OYOs as you go, and then finish your questions. You're going to turn those in, and then there's a discussion and a lab. A couple of you have not turned in your information on your heart dissection. So if you have not done that, try to get that in as soon as possible. All right, I hope that you guys had a great time